We see the headlines about massive lawsuits and market monopolies, but we rarely see the actual mechanics of how they're being fought. This is EconWorks. We look past the talking points to find where law, economics, and markets actually collide. Let's get into it.
When you think about who's taken on big tech, your mind probably jumps straight to, Brussels or maybe Washington, D.C., right? But what if I told you one of the most important battles over the future of the phone in your pocket is happening somewhere you might not expect? Yep, we're going to Brazil to unpack this huge, high-stakes fight over Apple and the economics of platform control. It all boils down to a pretty simple question that has literally billion-dollar consequences. Who really controls the device in your hand? I mean, you bought it. It's yours, isn't it? Well, that very question is at the heart of this massive global debate about power in our digital lives. And right now, the front line for that debate, believe it or not, isn't where you'd think. Some of the most groundbreaking and fastest moves in tech regulation are happening in Brazil. And it's raising some of the toughest economic questions for antitrust law today. Okay, so let's get into it. First up, what is this dispute between Apple and Brazil really all about? This right here? This is the move that changes the entire game. See, Brazilian regulators aren't looking at the whole smartphone market, Apple versus Android. Nope. They've zoomed way, way in. They've defined the market as only the distribution of iOS apps. And in that tiny kingdom, well, Apple isn't a competitor. It's the one and only gatekeeper. And the regulators say this gatekeeper power stands on three main pillars. First, there's distribution control. The App Store is pretty much the only door in. Second, they tie you to their payment system, forcing everyone to use Apple's billing. And third, and this is a big one, they practice hardware foreclosure, which means they can block rival payment apps from using key parts of the phone, like the chip you use for Tap to Pay. And this image really shows you the fundamental shift regulators are trying to force. On the left, that's the before, a totally closed system. One app store, one payment system, one company calling all the shots. And on the right, that's the after they want to see, a world with other app stores and other ways to pay. They're essentially trying to turn Apple's private fortress into a regulated public highway. So this brings us right to the middle of the conflict, the great debate between the regulator and the platform. Because at the end of the day, this whole argument really comes down to which lens you're looking through. You can look at the exact same platform and see two completely different things. It all depends on your point of view. So what are these two sides? Well, if you're a regulator, Apple's closed ecosystem looks like a fortress built to maintain market power. That 30% fee looks like a tax or rent on developers, and the rules look like a way to lock out competition. But from Apple's perspective, that integrated system is the product. They argue the fees pay for all the innovation and that the restrictions are absolutely crucial for protecting all of us from security threats and fraud. This entire massive debate can be boiled down to one tiny piece of hardware, that little NFC chip for contactless payments. And it poses this huge question. Is that chip like a public utility, a road that everyone should be able to use? Or is it Apple's private property that they can control however they want? Regulators have a term for this, the NFC bottleneck. Their argument is that by restricting access to that chip, Apple is forcing all tap-to-pay traffic down a single, narrow lane that leads directly to Apple Pay. What they're saying is, if you open up that bottleneck, you could create a multi-lane superhighway where tons of other payment apps could finally get on the road and compete. So, why is this all happening so darn fast in Brazil compared to other places? That brings us to our next section, two systems, two speeds. Just look at this timeline. A complaint gets filed in 2022, and there's a final implementation deadline by April 2026. Now, in the world of antitrust, where big cases can drag on for a decade or more, this is basically light speed. It's the regulatory equivalent of breaking the sound barrier. And the reason for this speed comes down to two fundamentally different philosophies. Brazil has an administrative model that's built for quick intervention. It tries to fix the very structure of the market to prevent problems from happening in the first place. That's called ex ante regulation, acting before the harm. The traditional US model is much slower. It's a judicial process about proving in court that consumers were harmed after it's already happened. That's ex post. And these different philosophies are creating totally different realities all over the world. When it comes to that single NFC chip, the EU says it's open access for everybody. The US allows for restricted access. And now Brazil is creating this third way, a kind of partial, regulated access. We are literally watching three competing economic experiments play out in real time across the globe. Which leads us to our final point. This isn't just a case study, it's a live, real-time experiment. And the big question is, what happens next? One of the key sources for our explainer puts it perfectly. It says that Brazil's approach really changes the central question of antitrust. It stops being about, are markets competitive right now? And it becomes about, does the market's very structure even allow new competition to be born tomorrow? And that, right there, is the biggest takeaway from all of this. We could be seeing a fundamental shift in what antitrust even is. It could be moving away from just punishing bad behavior that happened in the past and moving towards actively designing the digital markets of the future. So we're left with a powerful question at the heart of this whole global experiment, a question that regulators, tech companies, and really all of us are going to have to answer. Should the rules of our digital world just wait around and react to harm after it happens? Or should they try to build a better, more competitive market right from the start?
Thanks for watching. For the deep dive economic analysis behind these stories, join us at econworks.com. Subscribe to stay informed on where law and economics meet the market. We'll see you in the next episode.